All right, so let's start the first round of the sandwich anime review with this Romeo and Juliet, man.
Romeo times Juliet, Don. Get
Yes, Romeo times Juliet. Okay, so you know, I know that you are a Shakespeare fanatic, right?
I don't think I wouldn't call myself a fanatic.
Oh, okay. So what would you call someone that is in love with most of the plays, hates it when someone, goes outside and fucks around with them, and, is basically really anal about everything about that world?
I don't know what you're talking about. That's not me.
All right, okay, that's not you. We'll soon see. Because this is another... Romeo and Juliet is one of those stories that has been adapted multiple times.
Romeo times Juliet.
You saw this before me, right?
I saw it about a year and a half ago, I think.
Okay. When it first came out, I just thought, nah. Romeo and Juliet has been done to death in so many ways. And, I just saw that in school, it's part of the syllabus to learn Romeo and Juliet. In terms of anime, I thought I knew what to expect. I just thought, like, with Accounting Monte Cristo, let's use that as an example. I knew that I was going to get some different elements.
Indeed.
In terms of Japanese animation, and I knew they'll mess around with the storyline. But in its core, I got what I knew I was going to get from that show. And I like that show, Ganku Tetsuku, or the Count of Monte Cristo, however you say it. And very colourful, very nice, and maybe we'll talk about it another time.
Yeah, I think we should definitely talk about that.
But talking about Romeo times Juliet...
Get the times right.
Times, definitely. Anyway,
it was times something.
It was times, yeah. Well, anyway, talking about this show, it definitely was nothing at all like I was expecting. But so when you watch this, the first thing you said to me was, "Don, you better watch that Romeo and Juliet because this is I don't even want to tell people how you felt. Let me go through the basic plot line of the anime for Romeo times Juliet for the people who don't know what it's about, okay?
Please.
This is the setup, people. The anime starts with a prelude 14 years in the past, and it starts off with Juliet's family, the Capulets, being murdered by a group of Montagues led by Leontes. 14 years later, well, after Juliet's family gets murdered, she goes into hiding. 14 years later, the Montagues rule the land with an iron fist. Juliet is about to turn 16, and she's become a vigilante of the people, fighting against the Montagues' rule. And her name is, she dresses up as, it looks like a guy, I don't know. She's called the Red Woman, basically. She defends the people, and the people love her. Unbeknownst to Juliet, on her 16th birthday, which is just around the corner, her whole life's about to change. And it's going to be the start of an uprising with a plan to restore her family's honor and to claim revenge against the Montagues. And that is the basic plot line. I know you didn't hear me say Romeo once in that, but yeah, it seems to be about Juliet getting revenge on the Montagues for assassinating her family, which she doesn't really know about at this point. Anyway, that's the basic plot line. We'll get into the finer details just in a bit.
I don't know if it was about... Yeah, okay, we're going to get into the finer details, but it was...
That's what it's about initially.
Coolio.
Let's talk about the characters. This, unlike the play or what I saw in the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, most of the characters, apart from Romeo, Juliet, Leontes, Romeo's father, everyone else seemed to be a side character in this. I can't even remember any of their names. How do you feel about the characters in this?
Let's just say that they're much changed from the play, from what it's based on. Obviously, Juliet is supposedly a vigilante, and her character to me was okay, I guess. It's really difficult for me to to differentiate between the two, to really talk about the two, because the Juliet that they're basing it on and this Juliet are two different characters altogether. So, as a character, when she's dressed in the red whirlwind, she seems to be strong and, you know, out to help the people that have been oppressed by the Montagues. And when she's Juliet, she just seems like some little weak flower, you know, limp flower.
I don't agree with that, but carry on.
Well, I think so. Well, yeah, so to me, that's all I'll say about her, really. Romeo, just the guy that likes to fly about, really, on his horse. I don't really see that he had any real substance until it got to the second season, I guess. You know, so in that sense, once again, I found them quite boring, both of them boring for me. And the rest of
anyone else?
And the rest of the characters, like, you know, that you do see, like Thibault, Cordelia, all the rest of the characters are just really side characters. They really don't have much substance at all. And, you know, except for, obviously, them bringing in William Shakespeare, which I nearly, you know, gouged out my eyes to see.
Oh, come on. William Shakespeare is Romeo. What's not to like?
To tell you the truth, I could go on about that for like an hour.
You can go on about that, and you know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm saying? I'm going to talk about what I think of the characters, and I think the way I'm going to talk about them, you're going to feed off me a bit more.
I think so, because you know what I mean?
Tiptoeing around, and I understand, because you are a fanatic, and you know when you spoke to me about the characters, you were foaming at the mouth with venom, you know. So let me tell you what I think about the characters. Like I said, the characters in this anime, more than half of them are just there, you know, to serve a purpose, and I don't remember any of their names because they're not interesting or make any kind of big effect at all. Juliet was my favorite character. She was completely rewritten from Shakespeare's play into a heroine, an anime, your typical anime heroine. As the Red Whirlwind, she was a great character, saving the people. I really liked her. As Juliet, her character was confusing because she was, you know, I'm sorry if this is a spoiler, which is not at all really. She's pretending to be a boy in the anime to hide her identity from the Montagues, right? So she's never really Juliet anyway. She's most of the time, she's either pretending to be a boy or pretending to be the Red Whirlwind, and she just doesn't know who she is, really. She's basically confused. But she's likable because she's kind of strong-spirited through the anime. She's the leading character, which is a complete role reversal, obviously, for the play. But anyway, let me talk about Romeo. Romeo is so placid and soft and a watcher through the whole anime. It is just silly. You know, I know that this is a role reversal, but Romeo is just so boring, it's unbelievable. He's just so dumb and airheaded and soft.
He's like dull. There's nothing of him at all. The only interesting thing about him is his horse that flies, and that's not even him.
He just flies around the town half the time.
Just so
and
boring.
I don't even know why these two are destined to be together, because Juliet just seems like she could do better.
Well, you know, the reason why I say that I found her limp, in a sense, as a female, is the fact that when she was in her room and she let her hair down, she started blushing and she was more like, oh, what to do? What should I do? Kind of thing. And it kind of bothered me. Do you see what I mean? Because
that's the Juliet that people were expecting, though. That's the Juliet that people know, right?
No, not to me, no. I mean, obviously, there is an element of, would I say shyness? There is an element of, an element of shyness with Juliet, that she's a little bit, what's the word that I'm looking for?
I don't know, adorable, timid, what?
Yeah, but that's part of, slightly timid, but that's part of the fact that this play set in the in the 1500s, and so women back then weren't really seen as strong
Outspoken.
and daring, and outspoken. So I guess in that sense, what you're saying about Juliet in this anime is a slight breath of fresh air, because obviously that twist that they've made her like the main character, is something that would never have happened. Well, it does happen in Shakespeare's plays, but it wouldn't have happened to this Juliet in a sense, And so,
All right, well,
yeah.
No, carry on, finish.
Well, you interrupted me now, and I've lost my train of thought.
Okay, sorry.
You should be.
I just want to move on to Leontes, who is, to me, apart from Juliet, he's the second most interesting character. He is Romeo's father. He's the tyrant. He's the person who murdered Juliet's family. And he's he's insane. And he's very compelling. Later on in the anime, you get to see a bit more of his backstory. And he's a very interesting character. Everything about his character had passion, motivation, anger, energy. I really liked him. He was exactly what he should be. He was a really great villain in this anime.
Yeah, he was. He was a very, very good villain. And obviously his name, Leontes, was actually from another Shakespeare's play called The Winter's Tale. And so I don't even know why that was thrown in, why they just didn't call him Lord Montague and done. But for some reason they felt that it was apt to do so. Yeah, he was a good villain. He was a very, very good villain. His backstory was interesting, but then it became slightly incestuous. It made the story incestuous because of his background.
The story starts to fold in on itself in many ways, but I just want to. This is the last character I want to speak about, which you didn't go into detail about for reasons I understand. William Shakespeare in this anime, not only does he serve no purpose, but I found him to be completely condescending. He's telling you what he wants to happen. And I don't know if he's trying to be like a sidekick, like, no, Juliet, stay on the path. Your life, you can find love. Then no, Juliet, your love is destined to be a love of destruction. Star-crossed lovers. He's in the anime dancing around, doing his plays. It is dumb. And it is very annoying. It took away from the anime. It didn't bother me as much as it bothers you, Nuancy, because I know how much it bothered you. But I just thought every time he came on the screen, he was like Juliet's counselor, and I just didn't think it made any sense why the actual writer of the story, would be her counselor. It's fucking stupid.
I mean, to tell you the truth, everything about William, or Willie, as they called him in the anime, was really aggravating to me. First of all, he looked like a paedophile. He spoke like a paedophile. He walked around like a paedophile. He looked like, there was some young boy waiting in his room to be done. It just aggravated me. Secondly, there was really no point. They made him to be like the little comedic little jester in the corner. Came on with his stupid little lines from other plays and stuff like that. It was absolutely infuriating. I absolutely hated it, and it really pissed me off. I hate when people do that anyway, and they bring William Shakespeare into the plays. Like, Shakespeare in Love is one of the movies that I hate, as you know, yeah, for the
same reason.
For that and other reasons as well. But I just could not stand him as a character. I just thought it was totally misplaced and unnecessary. Do you see what I mean? And because sometimes when he came in, then they reverted back to, the Shakespearean language, which
we'll get into that with the audio. We'll talk about it with the sound. But
which I found, but because it happened a lot with his character, I have to bring it. That's why I bring it up now. I found disjointed. And so I just hated his character. I just thought it was so unnecessary, didn't need to be in there. It just was stupid. And he was so camp. It was unbelievable to me.
Ooh, okay.
He was you did not find him that way?
I did.
Yes.
I did. I don't know if he was meant to be comic relief, but it was he just made the anime worse. Period. It just made the anime worse. And I found it condescending because it's like he was constantly reminding you that he reminded you that this is the anime, but I'm in this to remind you
of the play.
That I know that what the play should be. And he kept on telling you things about the original play.
Yes.
Like, no, so it's like, why are you telling me? I don't need you to tell me these things.
Saying lines from the original play. So it's like I couldn't. It's like to say, just in case you forget, just in case we've gone so far you can't remember, hello, this is based on Romeo and Juliet. And it's like, no, it ain't.
It's like someone doing a remake movie and then having the guy that wrote the movie in there telling you about the older one. It's like, well, what are you doing? Why are you telling me this? I don't care. Just stay away. I just want to watch a story. Don't come and start telling me this shit. Anyway, let's move on to the animation. I thought the animation in this was the best. Yeah, it was the best part of the anime. It was really clean. The characters, it was very clean, but actually, right off the bat, something I didn't like, it looked kind of soft. The characters looked really innocent, all of them, except for Leontes. They, Romeo and Juliet, they're drawn as teenagers because they are teenagers, but it's just everything looks kind of Disney-fied, which is really disappointing to me, as I really would have preferred them as young adults. Going the 19, maybe 21 or something. And, that also reflects in the storyline, which we'll get to later. But anyway, apart from that, the action scenes were pretty good. The landscape was really good. The opening was good. The animation on the whole was really clean and really nice to look at. I just didn't really like the style that they went with. And it was done by Studio Gonzo, which is one of my favorite studios who did stuff like Gantz and Afro Samurai, I believe, and some other stuff. So it was really nice. The animation was good, but I just wish that, regarding the character designs, I wish it was just a more mature-looking anime. It just looks too cutie for me.
Yeah, so. I totally agree with you. I don't really have much to add, but just to say that I really felt that the way that they were drawn, they just looked way too similar. You couldn't really differentiate between Romeo and Juliet, if you know what I mean. There was no real character to me in the way that they were drawn. Like you said, even though they're supposed to be the age that they are, as we're going to back to the play, at that time, that was the age where people got married. Do you see what I mean? 15, 13, those are the kind of ages people did get married anyway. Do you see what I mean? So if you bring it into normal day life, I would have expected them to be drawn in a more feminine and masculine way, where I felt that a lot of the characters just were drawn too feminine. Romeo was drawn too feminine for me. There really wasn't any difference. I didn't enjoy it in that sense. It was too kiddie for me.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the sound. When this anime came out originally in Japan, I knew this is one anime I would never want to watch in Japanese, just because I just thought it would just be very dialogue driven, and I didn't want to read all that Shakespeare shit in Japanese, so I was only going to see this in English. I thought the dub was very good, but a lot of people complained about the lack of consistency, talking, using the same dialects of the time, even though this anime is set in Neo Verona, so it's kind of futuristic, has futuristic elements, but they do this thing, which I know Nuance you're about to elaborate on, where they break in and out of the Shakespearean kind of language, which it didn't bother me. I was just like, I don't really care, as long as I can understand what you're saying. But for other people, I think you either stick to one mindset. Either you're doing it, you're trying to stick to the actual way they talk back then, or you just be normal nowadays language. And it just kind of, at times, even there was one shopkeeper that was just like, hey, how you doing, you want that? Then other times it was, thou art want some bread, show me thou art pence, and whatever.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And the thing is that it had nothing to do with little bits from the play, because sometimes you can watch a remake of a Shakespearean play or the Canterbury Tales or something, and they take sections from obviously the play and they say it in its context, and in that sense it kind of makes sense, But with this, it didn't make no sense whatsoever. They, like you say, they'd be speaking normally, and then they would just drop into a totally different dialect, and it was kind of like, what the hell is this? I'm confused. Is it one or the other? Do you see what I mean? So I found it it was just another distraction, you know, and I found that these things were done because they were trying to remind us, trying to connect us to what supposedly this was based on.
I also want to bring up something else that a lot of people have a problem with, which I don't really understand. It's the theme song, You Lift Me Up.
You Raise Me Up.
Oh, sorry, You Raise Me Up, whatever, who cares? Now, this is one of those songs, like, you know them Mariah Carey songs that just never go away. Them love songs that you hear all the time. We belong together. You know, the people just love it, and you never ever stop hearing it. Now, You Raise Me Up is one of those songs. But the thing is, in this anime, it's sung in Japanese 80% of the time. The opening, they sing in Japanese. So I wasn't really bothered by it. They only sing in English at certain points.
I mean, this song has been covered more than 125 times.
What?
Yeah, what? It's been covered.
Where you get your information from?
Let me tell you something. I know this song. I feel like when I was born, this song started being played. This is how much I...
When the doctor raised you up out of the room, it's like, you raised me up.
It's like the first song I ever heard in my life. I feel like it's been following me wherever I go. Seriously, you know, and I'm surprised you don't remember this, yeah? But in England, we have one group that loves to do covers. All they're known for is covers, yeah? And then the name of the group is called Westlife, yeah? It's an Irish group, I believe, yeah? I think it's Irish, yeah? An Irish boy band called Westlife. They actually did a song with Mariah Carey at one point, but anyway, whatever, right? They did their version of this song, I think it was back in 2005, and it was played throughout that whole freaking year. Do you see what I mean? And I had to wiki this because I couldn't believe how many versions of this song were made. But I'm just going to put it out there so everybody can look. In 2004, yeah, it says...
Oh, boy.
In Wikipedia, yeah, oh, boy, you can oh, boy as much as you want. I had to put up with your 5 minutes, your 5 seconds of singing, which made my ear bleed. So now you can listen to this, yeah? In 2004, the song was played more than 500,000 times on American radio. And it had...
Who was counting that?
I don't give it... Somebody who hated the song as much as I do. And in 2005, there were 80 versions in the US, right? This song has been played out so much. As soon as I heard it, even if it wasn't Japanese, it is so iconic that it doesn't matter. You raise me... It's just too much. For me, I couldn't take the song.
So what, would you prefer a different song, or do you think they just overplayed it in anime? Is that what your complaint is?
I think it's probably going to be one of my pet peeves because I know the song so well. Do you see what I mean? Like, I've heard it so many times. What I will say is the intro didn't bother me when I heard it the first time. But it just, every time, it's just such a long song. It was just too much for me. I couldn't take hearing it. I hate the song anyway. And yeah, I would have preferred that they came up with something more original because in a sense, once again, it just made me feel like they were trying to say that this anime is iconic. You know what I mean? And we need a song that's iconic. You Raise Me Up is iconic. You know what I mean? It is an iconic song. It's been sung in every freaking language, every freaking genre, you know? So to me, it just solidifies again that they were trying to say that this anime is going to be fantastic.
So I guess this is one of those times you wish the anime was original, because when it isn't original, like the rest of the anime, you have a problem. But when it tries to do something original, then it can't win. It just can't win, you want to say.
If you say so, it could have won, I'm telling you, and we'll talk about that later, how it could have won.
Right, other than that, though, I think the rest of the soundtrack was pretty impressive. A lot of people love the sound, and the outro was really good, actually, if I remember correctly. I can't remember the name of the song, though.
To tell you the truth, both the intro and the outro didn't bother me, right? the song bothered me, but I actually liked the way that it was done, the intro and the outro, the way that the scenes of Romeo and Juliet, it was nice. It was just a bit much. It just didn't stand up to what I expected.
Okay. Well, guess what, Nuance say? Now we're getting to the meat of the anime, because we're going to talk about the storyline and, the inner workings of the storyline and the problems that we had, because I'm going to say right off the bat, the main issue I have with this anime, which is a serious issue, is the storyline and what they decide to do with this Romeo times Juliet story. I'm really going to try to keep this short because I could go on long about this. The problem with this anime is that it feels like if you take out the name Romeo and Juliet, this is just a totally different anime, because this is the only thing to me, Romeo, Juliet and Shakespeare, the character Shakespeare being in it. Apart from that, there's too many elements that are just so off from the actual story. And I know it's an adaptation, but this is the loosest adaptation I've ever seen. First of all, it's set in Neo Verona, okay? Fine. I expected that from an anime. It's meant to be, they throw a bit of technology in there, a little bit of flying machinery, flying horses, this, that, and the other. Fine. Now Juliet's the heroine and Romeo is the placid one. Alright, so then the first 12 episodes of the anime, it's about oppression. It's about the Red Whirlwind defending the people and the Montagues rule. Then after that, about 6 episodes, it's about Romeo and Juliet running off in the wilderness. And it's like, okay. Then it's like, okay, no, let's get back to the revolutionary aspect that we had in the first bit. And in the last 4 or 5 episodes, they bring this other storyline out of nowhere about Juliet being, without spoiling it, some source to the land. And then the ending is nothing. Like, you would think, people, if you don't know the story to Romeo and Juliet, it's a tragic ending. When this was over, this wasn't a tragic ending. It was just perplexing. It really was. It was just so dumb that, this anime has just got so many ideas that they've crammed into one storyline. And I really liked the first 12 episodes of it just being about the Red Whirlwind and the oppression against the Montague family. But when it starts adding these other elements in, Romeo and Juliet, to me, is a story about passion and love and sex and violence. Romeo versus, is it Mercutio or Tybalt? No, it's Romeo versus Mercutio after Tybalt kills Mercutio, right?
Yeah.
And then Romeo goes on the hunt for revenge. I was waiting for that. Romeo, even though they did the role reversal, there's certain key elements that you expect. In the Count of Monte Cristo, they changed a lot of shit, but they kept some of the key things in there.
Yeah, the vengeance. The
vengeance and that. In Romeo and Juliet, doesn't seem to be anything except for their names. All the key points, none of them are there. There's no, Juliet has vengeance, which is totally different. Romeo is just nothing. There's no, everything I expected from this, and it was just really disappointing, man. This is just not Romeo and Juliet to me at all. It's a sad attempt to use the name when, if you take out the name, the storyline, even if it wasn't called Romeo and Juliet, it's a bit of a mess. But when you add Romeo and Juliet, the name in, you're like, what are you talking about? Romeo and Juliet, you got 2 kids that don't know what they're doing in a world that's confused. And I say a world that's confused because when you see the ending, you'll realize that everyone in the whole anime is fucking confused because they don't even know what the hell's going on. So, in a nutshell, I'm not happy with the way they wrote the story. It's convoluted or however you say that word. It's totally a mishmash of ideas. Then you throw the Romeo and Juliet name on. And that's all I have to say.
I'm clearing my throat. Basically, I could go on about this for hours, and if anybody has been on Planet Tyro recently, they would have seen that I had gone on about it for a while with somebody else on the site. And I'm not going to go on for 2 hours, which I would like to do, but I'm just going to say that I 120,000 quadrillion % agree with everything you just said, Don. And I just don't understand why they had to take it into this place. Because Romeo and Juliet is a freaking tragedy. That is what it is. Yeah? And it is based on two young people that really just want to be together, are so young. It's about sex, like you said. It's about hormones. It's about violence. It's about anger. It's about family feuding for no apparent reason. And that is what it is all about. My main problem with Romeo times Juliet is there was no passion whatsoever. None. There was no passion between Romeo and Juliet at all.
Yep, that's right.
There was one scene where I nearly threw something at my TV was the scene where they end up kind of spending the night together, and I think it was raining outside, and they're in this hut or whatever, and Romeo falls on top of Juliet in some way, and they're both half clothed, and they're staring at each other, and they start blushing. I'm like, what the fuck is this? This isn't Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is about, will thou leave me so unsatisfied? It is about sex. It's about, I want to be with you. I need to have sex with you. I need to be with you. Do you see what I mean? And it is about that kind of sexual intensity. Romeo and Juliet have that. And because they are so young, they see that as love, and to them and to a point it is love, and they just want to be together. They don't care about cities, they don't care about family, they want to be together. And that's the reason why I would say that the original Juliet may not be like Juliet in this Romeo times Juliet, but she was strong in her own way. For her to turn around and try and not to marry the person that her family didn't want her to marry, and for her to try and take her life and to, try and run away with Romeo, all of that at that time in the 1500s would show a strength of character. And so I don't understand why this needed to be changed so much that there was no testosterone, there was nothing. Romeo was like a eunuch. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing there. And to the point where they're actually living together, walking around like old people holding hands. And I just thought, why are they even living together? Romeo and Juliet is about, they're only destined to have this one night together, and that's it. They're pining for each other all the way through that. There was nothing like that in the whole anime. I didn't feel like there was any passion, any love, any joy, any anger. The only anger that I felt was from Romeo's dad.
Yeah.
That he had the most passion and the anger. Apart from that, nobody else did. So to me, the storyline was uber disjointed. The ending and season 2, my eyes glared over. I started thinking about rainbows or something, or whether I needed to go back to counseling to get over this experience of what I'm watching, because season 2 was diabolical. It was a mess. It was abysmal. I don't understand what they were thinking. It took the whole thing into a whole different...
Well, could I clarify something? Because you keep saying season 2, but this is just one run of 24 episodes. No. But the way it's made, it feels like 2 seasons.
It does feel like 2 seasons.
Because after the 12th episode mark, after the whole revolution thing is over...
seasons?
It's not. It's just 124 episode only.
Bloody hell. For some reason, I feel like I do actually believe... I made myself believe it's...
Because there's a point where you feel it could end. The first of 12 episodes, this whole Red Whirlwind situation, which I really liked, that had nothing to do with the Romeo and Juliet story at all, wrapped itself up. And I was like, I've watched half this anime, and I haven't seen anything about Romeo and Juliet, but I'm happy to stop here. And then it carries on. Romeo and Juliet run off and be together. for a long time, if you ask
They
me.
be together. They literally live like a very old married couple.
And they never, you know, sorry if this is a spoiler, they never have sex once.
Never.
And they was living together in the anime for how many, look like for a couple, like a month at
And I'm
least,
sure
or a couple of weeks.
I'm sure this happened. Maybe it happened in my mind. Yeah, but I'm sure when they did kiss, the first time they kissed, I'm sure they played "You Raise Me Up." I'm sure they did.
Yeah, they did, in English.
I nearly died.
Yeah, they played in English, I remember that. Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is this? Like, seriously, listen, like I said, basically, all right, the fact that it's not even 2 seasons is worse to me. Because the second half cancels out the first half.
That's
Because
correct.
what happens to... Then all of a sudden, first of all, it turns out to be like, you know, they kill off, you know, Juliet's family because of whatever. You know, the dad wanted to kill off Juliet's family, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to spoil it. And then the second, I keep on saying season, but the second half, all of a sudden, Juliet is the most important thing on their whole planet. you know what I mean? So it's like...
It's poor, so poor writing, so forced, and so unnecessary. It was so bad.
And you know what? When it ended, when that ended did come, I felt absolutely nothing.
Probably because it came out of nowhere, and it felt like it was written in 5 minutes. Because it literally happened in 2 episodes. The last 2 episodes, something out of nowhere that they give you little hints of early in anime becomes the central point in anime. Like, oh, you thought all this revolutionary stuff and all the love between Romeo and Juliet was how this was going to end? No. Now we're going to bring up something to wrap this up and give you that quote-unquote tragic ending you wanted.
Yeah, and then their roles changed again, where Romeo became the supposed hero.
Yeah, for 2 minutes.
And, yeah, you know, so it was just like, what is this confusion? What is this confusion? I thought it was one of the worst adaptations of Romeo and Juliet that I've ever watched.
I have to say, man, this was one of them times I was like, you know what, as far as anime adaptations go, this was terrible. And if someone that I don't watch, and you know, the funny thing is, having a name like Romeo and Juliet for an anime is bad because it's a gateway anime. Someone might go into a DVD shop, see it and think, wow, animated Romeo and Juliet, let me put that in. And when they watch it, they're going to be like, what the hell is this?
Well, they are going to be like, what the hell is this? And... you know, to me, they should have just called it Bob and Sue.
Yeah,
Bob
like
and
I
Sue
said,
go to the zoo or whatever. I don't know. Bob and Sue, or the Red Whirlwind, or something. Anything else? If they had called it anything else, but Romeo and Juliet, I mean, I would have still been confused, to tell you the truth, with the way that the two sections, you know what I mean, folded in on each other. But at least they wouldn't have based it on something as iconic as Romeo and Juliet, which over the years has affected so many different plays and movies. So I'm just...
All right, well, you know what, sir, I think we've gone on about this long enough. Let's let me give my rating for this anime and why. You know, the thing about this anime, I'm going to give it a watchable because if you can take the name Romeo and Juliet out of this anime, it has things I like about it. I might have dogged on this anime a lot, but there's elements I like. As far as adaptations go, it's terrible. But as far as it being an anime on its own, it's all right. It's the definition of watchable. Don't waste your time. There's nothing great about it. The animation's nice and clean. The sound is okay. It's just, if it's on TV and you're ironing your clothes or getting ready to, prepare for something, it's okay. But if you want to see an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, even though anime has creative license to, do something different, apart from the setting, Neo Verona, and the animation and all that other shit, it is just not an adaptation. It's a totally different anime. And this is the basic principle of misrepresentation. Bad advertising. Because this is not Romeo and Juliet at all. period. Romeo, call it time, put the X in there, because that X means no. Romeo, no, Juliet, because this isn't that story, this isn't that adaptation, it's just no. But there's things I like about it. I really like the Red Whirlwind character, I really like Juliet as a heroine, but no, these two are not the characters I saw from the Shakespeare play. They're not even, even the Leonardo DiCaprio 1995 movie or whatever, that was an adaptation in a more recent setting. Even that, people were complaining about that. Oh, come on, this is a bit radical, a bit different, but this is not. It's, you know what, I'm really being generous giving it a watchable, because if I had to compare it to the source material, it's a not feeling this. I don't want to say clown shoes, but it's a not feeling this in terms of how it does as an adaptation. But as an anime, on its own, it's okay. It's okay to watch.
Okay.
Period.
Okay, for me, I think everybody's going to know what I'm going to say. My whole thing is that if you say something is based, even if it is loosely based, on a book, a series, a play, or a movie, then it has to be relatable to that. And I believe that this is said that it is based on the William Shakespeare classical play, Romeo and Juliet, that to me, this is a pile of shit, really. I'm going to give it a not feeling this.
Okay.
Right? I would give it clown shoes, to tell you the truth, but I'm going to give it a not feeling this because, we joked at the beginning about how I feel about Shakespeare, but I am passionate about Shakespeare plays and things like that. So I believe that this wasn't true to the source material. I believe that it could have been much, much better, and I cannot see me ever watching this ever again. It was a total waste of my time. I'm not going to lie, I would like someone to pick up Romeo and Juliet and do it again as an anime, because I think that the story is so anime-ish anyway, that someone picking this up and doing a more truer version, but not exactly the same, but a truer version, it would be flipping fantastic. And I know I said this to you before, and I know you're going to be like, you won't say you're crazy, but I would have loved to see like a kind of berserk version of this.
Well, that's the first time I'm hearing that.
I'm sure I said this to you before.
Romeo and Juliet meets berserk.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I know everybody's going to be like, this girl likes
I think I already saw that anime. It is called Berserk. That was a tragic ending.
It was a tragic ending, but not because of the monsters and all that kind of stuff at the ending. It's just the vitality and the passion and all that stuff that Berserk had, which grabbed me, because Berserk grabbed me all the way through. The ending just sent me into shock. Do you know what I mean? So I think that it could be done again. It could be. I have hope that. I don't know. You're right. I don't think no one is ever going to do this again. But anyway, for me, it's a not feeling this. I'm not feeling it. I think it was badly done. I think it was badly written. I think the storyline was atrocious. The ending was abominable. And for me, there was no sex, no passion, and no vitality in it. And someone might say, she said sex so many times, you know what I mean? She must want to get some, but that's not it. It's that in the first, if you've ever read a William Shakespeare play, at the beginning, the first thing they talk about is sex. It is a poignant part of the play. So the fact that there was no real, sexual tension or anything like that, passion in there really just bothered me a lot. So, yeah, not feeling this.
Okay, you definitely explained your reasonings for that rating, and all I will say is people, I know a lot of people like this anime, but I know fanatics didn't like this anime.
I know,
like yourself.
Turned around and said, somebody said that if you couldn't get into Romeo and Juliet, then this is a good way to understand it for the new kids on the block.
Let me be more precise. I think it was Jess Otaku, one of the famous anime YouTube anime reviewers. She said that, and to quote her, she said more like, for the newer generation, this might be a Romeo and Juliet story they might be more susceptible to, rather than a William Shakespeare one. I can't agree with that, just because in terms of it being a love story, it's a bad one. They got the love element wrong.
They got the tragedy element wrong.
And the tragedy element wrong. If they got those two elements right in this anime, I might agree with her, because if you're talking about the actual Shakespeare play, you know, I don't want to talk about today's youth generation or go on about this anymore, but, you know, people are just more soft-headed. They need something more diluted to digest, and I think Shakespeare stuff in itself, and I'm going to get crucified for saying this, may be an acquired taste in itself.
I don't know about it being an acquired taste. I will say that reading a Shakespearean play is not an easy read. That's what I will say, because the language is very involved. And I can understand that it may be... I wouldn't even say that it's challenging, because I think it's not fair to say that about people today, the youth today. But I could see that some people may find it challenging, but there are so many adaptations and it written in normal language now, you know what I mean, and not in Shakespearean, that you could still get a lot from it. So I totally 125 quadrillions% do not agree with that. That's bullshit.
Sounds like a fanatic talking to me.
Whatever.
All right, anyway, so please, let's agree to disagree, because we were going on, believe it or not, we've gone on about this for a while, and if you want to hear our thoughts or our debate on, you know, Shakespeare and the youth today, or, you know, generation 2012, you know, we'll save that for another podcast, a different podcast, not Dreamcast. Or you can message me and say, if you want to talk to her about Shakespeare. I'm sure she'll appreciate that.
I have no problems with that.
Okay.